JD Carlson. He is the founder of the Retireholics and CEO of Plan Design Consultants, Inc. We talk about his pension administration origins and podcasting. So let's begin. JD, thank you for being part of our 20th episode. For our listeners who may not know who you are, can you please introduce yourself?
My name is James Douglas Carlson, but everybody calls me JD, and everyone has called me JD since I was a baby. Mom and Dad named me after a college friend, JD, so that's what I've always been called. I grew up, I was born in 1971. I grew up a few houses from the beach in California and started surfing at age 7. And that was my thing, man. I'm a surfer turned 401k guy. So I was obsessed with surfing, surfed multiple times a day. Like every other kid on the beach, I aspired to be a professional surfer. I turned pro when I was 17 and took a crack at that for a few years and never really had the success I had hoped for. Ended up losing in a lot of competitions, but slugging it around, doing my best. So kind of failed at that, but enjoyed it and had a blast. That transitioned into me opening a retail surf shop, La Jolla Surf Company. And I ran that with my wife. And as we started to build our family and start to have small children, I have 3 children now. They're all getting older, 22, 18, and 16. And throughout every stage in my life, my father, he was a TPA guy, right? He started Plan Design Consultants, the company that I own today. He started it in 1975. And through every stage of my life, my dad would always reach out to me and be like, hey, do you want to come run the family business? You want to take over the family business? And I was a surfer. And I was like, hell no, I don't want to wear a suit and tie and do whatever it is that you do. So I turned him down every time until I was, 2 or 3 years into that retail surf shop. And we just weren't succeeding. I think we were spending more. We were spending more money as a family than we were bringing in with this little retail store down by the beach. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't pulling it. So I got into the business for all the wrong reasons, right? For nothing but financial security and money. I called my old man and I said, all right, tell me about this business. I think I'm going to make the leap and do this. I got to support my family, et cetera, et cetera. You can fill in the blanks. So he said yes. And I jumped in and started to learn everything by following my father. He was my guru and my teacher. That was some 15 plus years ago. I've since bought the business from him. So I'm the owner of the company. I've got about 26 employees, maybe 27 at this point. And I love it. Like I said, I did it for all the wrong reasons, but I fell in love with, I don't know if I would specifically say I fell in love with 401k, although I kind of did, but I really fell in love with being an entrepreneur, right? I fell in love with the idea of getting up every Monday morning and how we're going to make the business better, how we're going to achieve more in sales, how we're going to run a better shop operationally, how we're going to market and brand ourselves to the outside world. So, I really fell in love with all that. It's still what fires me up and inspires me every day now, is just to run a great company and try and improve it. And at the same time, sounds cliche, but it's really true for me. I love the people that I work with, right? We'll talk a bit about Retireholics in a bit, but yeah, everyone that I work with is a friend and a family member to me. And it's just a lot of fun. The journey of running a TPA 401k shop, turned out to be a good decision. So I'm glad I put the surf shop behind.
Your story is shared amongst so many Americans who grow up with a dream profession. And at the time that you were, 7 years old, your dream was to become a professional surfer, which you did achieve at age 17. Now regardless of how you performed in, past surf competitions, the reality is you got to live your dream. And it's important to mention that because not many people have that opportunity. But in your case, you were a surfer and you co-owned a surf shop with your wife. And That's just a beautiful story because you were able to share your dream with someone else. But, as things happen, your family grew, it evolved, and so did your financial needs, which, was a valid reason for changing your profession. But, in regards to being an entrepreneur, and I like to, coin phrase entrepreneur as, podcasting, even if it may be a side hustle, there is a high that we get from either achieving our goals, whether it be sales or operations, improving your operations or just the evolution of your brand. I'm still new to podcasting, but I love connecting with pension professionals and building my network, and I've been fortunate enough to really leverage my podcast to, not only double my salary, but able to move to New York City and, work for the world's most famous arena. You've also had great, dividends in your career as well. My first follow-up question really is, how did you come up with the Retireholics?
In terms of coming up with Retireholics, I mean, if you really think back, we started this Retireholics 6 years ago, but we're like any other TPA or financial services firm, marketing to advisors through like live events, right? Like giving PowerPoint presentations at a local steakhouse or a hotel. That would evolve and or be supplemented by webinars, so hey, tune in on Tuesday at 10:30 and we'll take you through another PowerPoint and try to show you different designs and stuff like that. So that was marketing for us, right? And a couple of us within the company were like, we got to get on this video thing, because wouldn't it be cool if someone didn't have to show up at Tuesday at 10:30, they could just watch it and listen to it on demand. So that was the basic logic was, okay, how do we do video so people can just watch it when they want to? And then as we started to piece together what the show might look like, I've told this story before, but it was funny because originally it was going to be a typical like YouTube show. Like it was going to be my sales director, Chad Johansson, and myself and suit and ties sitting in the conference room, hopefully having like heated debates and cool conversations about a 401k subject matter, but pretty standard, right? And somehow we just took a heavy left turn where we were sitting around talking about it and like, hey, let's make this different. Let's make this fun. We started to brainstorm. Somehow beer came up, and then we just slid down this path of like, let's really loosen it up, right? Let's make it casual. Let's make it fun. Let's have the beer be involved, and maybe we'll play some games, try to get some laughs, but the whole time trying to deliver valuable 401k content to, our intended audience is advisors. It still is, but it's kind of grown to educating other TPAs as well as just industry peeps in general, but with a major focus on advisors. So that was the original concept and purpose, right? It's nothing any more grand than just kind of replacing the live events and the webinars. And not that we don't do live events, we still do, but putting all of our energy towards something that's video and could be on demand. And then as a show, it just kind of snowballed, right, itself. So that was a lot of fun for me. And this kind of ties to this surfer that we talked about before. If you think about my surfing industry, it's very edgy and counterculture and kind of punk rock. And that's how a lot of the brands kind of build their marketing. And that's innately in me, right? That kind of flows through my blood. I mean, I still surf every day, and I run my company in kind of a very counterculture kind of way, very different than maybe a lot of my peers. And so it's a lot of fun for me to make sure that the branding that we're putting out there and the marketing kind of matches who we are really, and it just makes it so much fun. So that's the creative process behind it is, how can we shake things up, kind of show who we are, and just have a lot of fun doing it at the same time.
It's awesome how your TPA firm organically created a fun and casual platform to educate others about 401k plans. And I think I just think that's how a lot of successful companies and brands are built, just organically, by first one, identifying a need in a specific market and then solving it. Your firm brings value to financial advisors by discussing ERISA compliance topics, the CARES Act, things like that that have popped up ever since COVID-19 became an epidemic. And I think that's just something that's very valuable since a lot of these topics tend to be kind of, dry topics, but all in the while, you stay true to who you are during these, discussions you have online. And it sounds like you're just a very free-spirited and easygoing person, which again helps build your brand, as this fun, educated TPA firm that, can talk the talk, walk the walk, discuss, you know, black and white legislation, but also have a good time while doing so, which again helps build your brand and your company's success. What challenges, did you face when creating the Retireholics?
We've faced all kinds of challenges, and we still do today face challenges. Yeah, I mean, think about my old man. He was a suit and tie guy. Started the company in '75, and I'm taking over the company at that point, and letting him know, like, hey, check out our YouTube show we're doing. We're drinking beer and doing all kinds of hijinks and having fun. And to be honest with you, my dad's a smart guy. Like, even though that didn't maybe mesh with his way of doing things, he understood it and he knows why we were doing it. And we've actually had him on as a guest, kind of calls in on earlier shows. And we even tried to make him pretend like he didn't like what we were doing and give us shit about it. But no, he's a huge fan of what we're doing. And when we first started to do like live events on stage, he was the first guy to fly out to watch us do it, even though he had been retired for several years. All kinds of other challenges. I mean, geez, I think in the beginning, there was a lot of people that were looking at what we were doing and were just kind of like, I'd have people walk up to me and just say, hey, I don't like this. Why are you unprofessionalizing our industry? So I have had plenty of haters that have come up and just say, I don't get what you're doing. I don't understand it. I don't know why you would do it. And we've gotten emails from time to time with people that just, don't like our vibe. But then there's, for every one person that doesn't like it, there's 50 that write in just saying, yeah, right on, man. Keep this up. I love it. And getting tons of value from the show. And I love how you guys are changing our industry. And so that's the fuel to your fire, right? That just keeps you going. And then what's been neat about it is we never had envisioned being at conferences, right? That was never part of the plan. This was always going to be like a YouTube show that we'd go watch. And so when we got the first call from a conference that wanted us to come and do our show live, we said yes, and then got together like, how are we going to do this? Like, we never even thought about this. And to be totally honest with you, like, that's been the most fun part of Retireholics, and we had never designed it, right? It was never part of the plan, which is to prep for and create a live on-stage show for these national conferences. So post-COVID, that's something that I'm really excited to get back to, and I know the boys are too, and just create a bigger and better live show for national audiences. Challenges in terms of recording and equipment, quality of audio and quality of video. And even recently we've kind of moved into this like live streaming concept, which comes with its own, bag of problems. Yeah, sure. If you watch episode 1, I mean, we sucked. Our audio sucked. And hats off to Brandon Carlson, our producer, aka my younger brother, who is really the brains behind all of our production, a lot of our show concepts, a lot of the graphic design and art and branding, and for sure is 100% in charge of the quality, right? And the equipment has just evolved with us from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. I mean, we've spent a shit ton of money on upgrading all of our equipment, from cameras to mics to mixing boards. And I mean, it's pretty amazing, the stuff that Brandon has built. But did we face challenges? Heck yeah, we did. But I've talked about this before. Our concept was kind of like, screw it. Let's get her done, right? Let's just jump in, and I'm not going to sit around and twiddle our thumbs and worry about whether we should have a better mic or a better camera. We're just going to start doing it and then evolve. And that's served us well. I also think it helps because our show, it has a bit of a sophomoric kind of vibe to it. So even the quality isn't great in the beginning. It was fine, but we are quality obsessed these days. So if you watch what we do, I mean, there's a lot of time and energy and money that goes into making sure that it's fun and easy to watch and listen to, and has a certain standard that and that's all Brandon. It's all Brandon. I can take zero credit for that.
I respect your resiliency, of being able to produce content and market that content to the TPA industry, especially in the beginning when you first started out, because a lot of people didn't understand your product, what you were providing through YouTube videos, for example, or, Vimeo or things like that, because it was new, it didn't exist in our industry. It's that resiliency that really helped your brand and your company, expand to different horizons that you might have not achieved had you not, taken a chance upon yourself. And, several years ago when I saw your first couple of YouTube videos, it motivated me to build my own brand, by producing podcast episodes where I interview all types of pension professionals, whether it be TPA administrators, financial advisors, pension recruiters, basically anyone who wants to share their experience with the world. And obviously every brand is different, but my focus is to produce quality, thought-provoking episodes that inform and, hopefully inspire others, just like you guys. I had just like you had I'll figure it out as I go mentality, when I created my first several episodes, and I still do just kind of wing it. But, with time I've improved a bit, and, I'm nowhere near being perfect, but I'm constantly improving just like you guys. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the Retireholics brand. Can you, just explain more in depth, the evolution of the Retireholics brand?
In terms of the evolution of the show, I think I manifest things a little bit. I definitely kind of play a chess game of business and make connections. And I think about, once we started getting invited to conferences, I thought to myself, like, okay, how do we up this a few levels? What are the bigger conferences that maybe we could go perform at? And so, yeah, I hit those people up. I look who's on the board of directors of different conferences, and I definitely network through the industry, and I'm not afraid to ask someone or recommend us. And so I'm always kind of got my eye on that ball, but at the same time, there's a methodology of, hey, let's just put our head down and work harder, right? Let's just continue to create new episodes, create new content, get that content out there, brand and market ourselves, just work hard, provide value, and then hope that the phone rings and someone's interested in what we're doing and wants us to be a part of their conference. So yeah, that's been a bit of the evolution, a bit of planning and chess moves, but also a lot of just hard work and hoping that good things happen. Have we had disagreements as a team in terms of our evolution and branding? For one of the guys on the show, Chad Johansson, I mentioned him before. He's my sales director. He is an absolute 401k pro, right? So suit and tie guy who has a stellar reputation for helping advisors prospect, market, close, win, and retain, retirement plan clients. And in the very beginning of the show, I think Chad was the one that would voice his disagreement at times, right? So I was like, let's put the pedal to the metal, right? Like, we're going to bring in 24-ounce cans of each domestic beer, and we're going to chug them, and we're going to put your hand in a mousetrap, and people are going to laugh. And all the while we're talking about target date fund, glide pass, or whatever the valuable subject matter is. And Chad was the one that was always kind of tapping the brakes, like, voicing his opinion of, do we really want to do this? Is it good for us long term? So yeah, we'd have those disagreements at times. I think, to be honest, if you really experience Retireholics, it's not as over the top or crazy as it appears to be from outside the window, right? It really is a boring 401k show where, these days we're talking for 60 plus minutes about current events and topics, designs and investments and advisor best practices. I mean, it's not all beer chugging and fun. There's a lot of serious conversation. We just try to keep it loose. So it's not as sophomoric and crazy as it appears from the outside. And the people that tune in every week, they know that. It's real industry conversations. And with, by the way, freaking thought leaders, right? I mean, the guests that we've had on the show, the Fred Riches and the Dick Darians and the Bill Chetneys and the Nevin Adams and the list goes on of just Sal Tripodi's, like industry icons, living legends that have joined us on the show. So it is serious 401k. We're just trying to make sure we put a smile on your face while we do it.
There's a lot of people who are skeptics about self-manifestation. I hear people talk negatively about movies like The Secret and how it's misleading. Critics disbelieve in self-manifestation, putting things out in the universe. They just think it's a lot of bullshit, basically. But in reality, it's their inability to see that a lot of things are possible. Your TPA firm being a great example of manifesting your dreams by, networking, producing videos, and just going after it. And that's the secret of self-manifestation, which is to work hard and be consistent so that you can achieve, whatever goal it is that you desire. And as I first mentioned earlier, my podcast helped build my brand to a level that I never thought I could achieve. When I first began podcasting, I was living at my parents' house with my wife, broke and unemployed. But then my podcast caught the attention of a large hospital in Dallas, Texas, which helped my wife and I leave my parents' house and become financially independent. And as I continued podcasting, I was then hired by one of the most iconic venues in the world in New York City, making over 6 figures without a BA degree. And mind you, we're only talking about maybe a year and a half time span, which all this happened. So self-manifestation is definitely real, just like how you self-manifested, building this brand for your TPA firm to build your own sales and, to build this network of consistent referrals coming from financial advisors, which is amazing, man. It really is. So, with that said, how do you see the Retireholics brand increasing your TPA firm's future revenues?
Does Retireholics and the branding that goes along with Retireholics increase our firm's revenue as a TPA? Heck yeah, it does. I mean, are you kidding me? We're nationally known now, by advisors all over the country and industry professionals. So it for sure makes our phone ring more, has our email buzzing more, has people reaching out to us wanting to know if they can work with us and how they can work with us and wanting to know more about our third-party administration company. So that's a guarantee that's we do it to have fun, but of course we're trying to move the needle in terms of marketing. I can't really tell you how much we spent on branding before. I don't really keep track of that. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to own a 45-year-old firm, right? That's profitable and does very well. Like, I don't necessarily have to keep a close eye on the bottom line. Obviously, I have metrics and things as a company as a whole to monitor our profitability. I can't say I really keep my finger on exactly what we spend in terms of branding and marketing. And I can also tell you that when it comes to the show, especially in the beginning, I mean, we were spending a lot more money than makes a lot of sense. I mean, come on. We send people free merch and, $60 sweatshirts that we ship across the country to someone for winning a silly game and all the equipment. And we've spent tens of thousands of dollars in equipment. And so, yeah, we've spent a ton of money on that. So I don't know the real ROI of that, but what I can tell you is that it's definitely increased our business and it's also a lot of fun to do. The content, when we're thinking about content, I mean, it's not rocket science. We're trying to figure out is what we're putting ourselves in the shoes of a financial advisor, right? Whether you're a 401k pro or you dabble in 401k and focus more on wealth management or financial planning, we're trying to come at those people with topics that sounds cliche, but would help make them be better at what they do, right? So that's what we're thinking about every time we're trying to come up with topics and concepts is, all right, what would be most valuable to the advisor audience? Now through COVID that we do this weekly, it's a little tough because you end up hitting on some of the same subjects from time to time. So the next thing we're trying to do is bring on a big guest that's got a unique perspective. And the show's going to be a hybrid of trying to get value out of that guest's brain. Like, what does that guest know through their history and their experience in 401k that they could share with our audience? And then what else is current events or cool things that advisors need to know about that we can voice our opinion on and get the guest's opinion? So that's it, man. It's pretty straightforward. What can be most valuable to our audience? And that's not an easy task. That's something that we're always redefining and trying to get better at, right? Is, all right, how do we really, really provide value? My dream for every episode is that someone walks away, with some handwritten notes of like, oh, here's 3 or 4 things that I should be doing or I should get involved deeper in that would make me a better K pro. That's what I hope for. In terms of measuring our success, it's kind of organic for me. Is that the right word? It's just really natural. Like, I'm not necessarily hyper focused on views and likes and comments because, to be honest, sometimes I can barely keep up with that shit. So, but it is, to me, that's the biggest metric, right? Is how many people are reaching out to me on the daily and the weekly that are either saying, hey, congrats, love the show, or hey, I enjoyed this episode, or, they're resharing our stuff on social media, which I think is so awesome that someone would take the time to reshare, an episode of ours or some post that we put out. So I think that's really cool. And it's just nonstop, right? With people commenting and supporting us. And so making sure that I'm getting back to them and meeting those people. That's really how I gauge our success, right? It's just through feedback, I guess is the best way to put it. And I mentioned earlier, and then referrals, right? So I gauge our success partly due to how many more plans we're selling every year and how much more money we're making every year. So that's not just Retireholics, obviously. That's the hard blood, sweat, and tears of my sales team and the hard work of the people that are doing all the job back at the office, the 5500s and the ADP tasks, because the better they do it, then the more repeat business we get from advisors. So yeah, we do not, everything we sell is through advisors. So we are not, and you've probably heard me discuss the show, like the show is laser focused on advisors. We do not market to plan sponsors, and nor do we get plan sponsor direct clients. Everything we do is through a financial advisor. If a plan sponsor stumbled their way into our office and wanted us to be their TPA, we would find a local advisor to match them up with because we just think that job is paramount. So yeah, so nothing, we don't focus our attention directly on plan sponsors. It's all focused on advisors.
Again, we spoke about, adding value earlier in our conversations and how this is a great way to leverage your expertise to receive compensation, whether it be directly from the plan sponsor or indirectly, which it sounds like that's how you guys receive your money through, referrals from financial advisors, CPAs indirectly. But regardless, it's that leverage that helps provide that revenue stream. And, your firm being a third-party administration firm, most of your business comes from these financial advisors, which again, as I mentioned, are these, referral revenue sources, which it sounds like it's been increasing, since the time you've established your YouTube videos, your content using the Retireholic brand and what that brand represents, which is the projection of expertise, putting out their content that people can use as valuable advice or as a map to administer their plans correctly. And for many people starting out in a new career or a business, it's difficult to find that expertise, or how many people coin it as a niche. It's hard, especially when you're first starting out, as to what you want to specialize in, because it takes trial and error to discover what you're good at, or at least what you're decently good at. And your firm, is focused on bringing respected pension professionals, like you mentioned, Fred Reish, to provide his unique perspective on ERISA. And, which is very similar to what I do. My guests range from Ted Benna, the first 401k plan sponsor in the U.S. history, to Aaliyah Robinson, a former pension lobbyist, for the ERISA Industry Committee. We both use this strategy because our audience wants to hear the perspective from these professionals, which is, something that really isn't given in today's market. That being said, you are the founding father of 401k podcasting. You and your friends are definitely the pioneers, per se, within our niche. How do you feel about other consultants having their own podcast?
I'm kind of two minds when you talk about the my peers and competitors and everyone podcasting and doing videos and focusing more on social media. I mean, do I feel like I was there a little early and therefore I had a more captive audience? Maybe. Do I feel like these days, like there's so much running through people's feeds, that their social media feeds, that's 401k content, that it's like, oh, am I going to get drowned out? Like, how do I get noticed? Sure. I have those insecurities. And have I always been a proponent of other people in the industry putting out creative, new, cool things? Yeah. And I still feel that way. I feel like as an industry as a whole, we need to up our game and we need to start to look different and talk different and present ourselves as the unique solutions that we are, as opposed to, I think if you look 15 years ago, all TPAs look the same, all advisors look the same, record keeping was a commodity. So I'm a huge fan of more creative, non-traditional forms of marketing. So no, I'm always going to support it. And I feel like it's kind of I don't think it's a zero-sum game either. Like, I think that I'm great friends with a lot of my competitors. And I think there's a lot of cool value that comes from having those relationships and pushing and promoting each other. Let me put it this way. I've had other TPAs as guests on Retireholics, right? So if that doesn't tell you where my mind's at with all that, I don't know what does. I'm willing to promote them on my own show. So I definitely feel like the better the industry does as a whole, the more psyched I am. Some of my favorite podcasts that are out there, I love the stuff Jeannie Fisher does on LinkedIn. You're talking about 6-minute or less videos. I've told her time and time again, she has a skill like no other. Like, her ability to hit the 8 top bullet points in 4 minutes and do it in such a clear, succinct way is amazing. And so every time I see one of her videos, I'm listening in because she's really, really good. And we've had her on the show several times, so we consider her to be a family member of Retireholics, a great friend of the show. Jeannie Fisher's an absolute beast when it comes to 401k. So if you're not following her on LinkedIn, you should. Lately, I've been into Josh Itzo's podcast, the Fiduciary You podcast. He's probably got about 12, 14 episodes out there that I think are really, really good. He's got big guests, Fred Reish, Fielding Miller, all kinds of big shots he's had on the show. And he does a great job of voicing his own opinions as well as really asking tough questions of his guests, questions that I want to know when I'm sitting at home with my earbuds in. And so Josh Itzo, the Fiduciary You podcast is great. In terms of my least favorite podcasts out there or content like that, there's a lot of it, man. I mean, there's so much horrible shit that people put out that and not necessarily just podcasts, but just videos and clips for LinkedIn. I'm not a fan of the camera phone in my car, giving me a quick update. I'm not a fan of someone sitting down in front of a camera and kind of reading off a script. I'm not a fan of large Fortune 500 companies trying to create content on something new that they've put out that's just so drab and boring and self-promotion. There's lots of crap on the internet that I think people need to take a second look at. So my advice to 401k people trying to work on their marketing and branding and getting content out there is you probably read this type of advice, so I apologize, but it's really true. The number one rule is you have to be providing something valuable to your consumer, right? So that's your first box you need to check. And that's got to be kind of your driving mission statement, right? Is am I giving something free to these people that's valuable to them? Because otherwise you're just wasting their time, right? They got enough crap to look at on their phones and their computers and their email inboxes that you need to give them something that they will walk away from that's actually valuable. And so that's the first thing you have to ask yourself. If you're putting out content that's for you, yourself, selfishly, or to promote something that's really not of that much interest to them, or you're not thinking specifically about, well, is someone that tunes into this actually going to walk away with something, sorry for the word again, valuable, then you need to start over. You need to scratch it and start over. My next big advice, which is probably easier said than done, is like I told you, I was upset with like the scripted stuff. I'm also upset with like the copycat stuff, just it's like everyone trying to do the same thing. I guess this sounds funny coming from me, but yeah, I just feel like it needs to be you, right? And I know that's typical, and authenticity is a huge word out there, but your clients like you for a reason. Your family loves you for a reason. Your close friends like you for a reason. Like you have a personality, so kind of use it. And I would be much more interested in a transparent look into your life and your business and your day to day, as opposed to you scripting something and sitting in the perfect chair with the perfect background in the perfect corner to tell me about, some K insights. Like, shit, show me what a conference room meeting looks like, at your office. Like, show me what it looks like for you to be on a call with, a client or a prospect. Show me the frustrations you go through as you pick funds for a core menu. Like, I don't know, but show me something that's real, that's transparent, and it's not like produced. And I'm going to be a lot more interested in tuning into that. And that's my advice for people that are trying to build their personal brand and put content out there. Like, show me the real shit. Show me what you do every day. That's going to translate, and it's going to get people excited about wanting to know more about who you are.
Mention Jenny Fisher. We both were fortunate enough to interview her. She is one of those genuine and sincere individuals that you rarely get to meet, and her knowledge in financial planning is just, a high level, advanced skills that not many financial advisors offer. And, her media content style is also unique, being short, sweet, and straight to the point, because there's many people, including ourselves, that produce quality media content in an effort to provide value, to individuals. And I agree that authenticity is an important factor when building a brand, since it's easy to identify when someone isn't. Now, of course, everyone has a different style, which is different, but, this, for example, like our conversation, it's scripted in a sense that, we gathered our thoughts, there was an outline that I had prepared, you provided me your answers, and now I'm, here typing up my answers and recording them. That's just my style, which, is different from, maybe the Retireholics, where it's more live, you guys have more time to sit back and just, really shoot the shit. And, it's just different, but it's authentic. It's who you are. And that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters. But, I do agree that there are people who should dedicate more time to craft their brand, craft their delivery, craft their style, instead of just flipping on a cell phone while jogging or bicycling and then just giving, very generic 401k plan advice. Now, what do you think about fintech companies and their place in the K industry?
We are in exciting times, and we've got a lot of, I'm using air quotes here, but K disruptors, right? These technology, at least they claim to be technology driven record keepers or firms that are hitting the marketplace. We're an industry that's been dominated by in terms of record keeping, right, by mutual fund families and insurance companies. And then within the last 10, 15 years, some of these kind of independent open architecture record keepers. Well, recently, though, there's a lot more of these VC backed, disruptors that are coming in saying, look, this industry's broken. We're here to fix it. And I have some issues with a lot of them. I want to first state, like, I'm all for evolution and change, and I'm especially a huge fan of tech. But some of the messages that these companies are delivering about our industry being broken, and then it seems to me the biggest flag that they're waving is like low fees. Like that's their big message is like, oh, the industry's been ripping everyone off. And so if you come to us, it's low fees. And for them to get to low fees, there's a lot of kind of sleight of hand and tricks that they're doing. They're carving out advisor roles. They're bringing in cheap, inexpensive, administration compliance solutions. They're doing things that to me aren't in the best interest of the client long term. And it might look attractive to buy it today, but it's not going to help the client succeed in terms of helping participants get retirement ready and helping plan sponsors navigate their fiduciary responsibilities. And so I just think we need to be very wary of those types of companies. I also think that when VC is putting tens of millions of dollars in investment money into some of these companies, it makes me wonder like what the true purpose is of the companies, because VCs aren't here to just get like a standardized rate of return, right? I don't know a ton about venture capital, but I know enough to know that they're looking to like 5x, 10x, 20x, 100x their money, right? Isn't that the case? So you need to ask yourselves like, what is the real plan for these companies? And I think a lot of them, this is a whole new conversation we're having these days, is around the value of data, the participant data. Think Google, Facebook, stuff like that, and how valuable personal information and data is, so you can sell people things that kind of mesh with what they might want to buy. Well, imagine the value of people's financial information. And so 401k providers that are gathering that data have a really interesting future ahead of them. And I'm not completely against this. I don't want to be misquoted here. I mean, I think there can be some neat things that we could create using data to appropriately, yes, sell, but I would say provide solutions to participants that would be useful to them and necessary for them. And so I think that the future could be really cool in that regard, but I think we need to understand conflicts of interest, right? And we need to understand business models and profitability models and what these companies are trying to do. And so if in terms of conspiracy theories, if I throw on my tinfoil hat, I've mentioned over and over again that how much of an advisor advocate I am. I really feel like the advisor is the puzzle piece to participant and plan sponsor success. I really don't feel like a plan sponsor and a plan and the participants can succeed without a dedicated 401k financial advisor in their position. And I believe that the best way we move forward is letting those advisors use technology to be more efficient and to help the little account balances. And there's lots of things we can do around with this convergence of health, wealth, and retirement. I just don't want the large Fortune 500 companies or the 401k disruptors that I previously mentioned. I don't want them in charge of that. I want the advisor in charge of it in some way. I feel like we'd be in better hands if the advisor is the one quarterbacking that. And I'm not a fan of conflict of interest. And so what I don't want to see is record keepers out there selling free or super cheap record keeping and admin when it's just their Trojan horse to get in to sell other things to the participants. I'd rather see it in a transparent world where the advisor's working hand in hand with the plan sponsor. And yeah, maybe saying, hey, look, we're going to use this technology, we're going to use this data to sell or help, I guess sales is such the wrong word, right? But to help put the right products in front of the participants that could use them. Think emergency savings, college savings, shit, I don't know, a lower mortgage rate. I mean, things that could help them. And so if that retirement plan advisor and his or her firm could act more like a financial planner to all those participants and move the needle as it relates to financial wellness and retirement readiness and all that kind of jazz, I think that could be a pretty cool future 401k. But let's not let this VC backed technology record keepers attempt to do that.
JD, your perspective on fintech companies is spot on in that, these companies are trying to become the future, the future record keepers, future advisors, etc. But by trying to be all these things, at once, it does come with a cost. Like you mentioned, a conflict of interest, or at least a potential conflict of interest, including poor administration services, since a lot of these are startups and, they lack the tenure, they lack the actual consulting experience and rely more heavily on, cookie cutter plans and programmers to streamline these administrative services. In addition to that, their organizational structure is unstable since a lot of them have high turnover. You go on LinkedIn, you search certain fintech companies, and then you see that their CEO had left. Now they're with another fintech company that's not even in the TPA space. They're, venture capital or whatever. Or you look at their senior managers and they're gone within 9 months. So there's definitely high turnover in these, fintech companies, which ultimately hurts client relationships. And, on top of that, as you mentioned, all the data that they gather, from plan sponsors and participants, it is questionable as to what it is that they truly do with all that data, but it's not far-fetched to think that potentially, maybe these fintech companies are potentially selling the data, to sell future products, like you mentioned, whether it be life insurance, health insurance, HSA, FSA accounts, things like that. But, at the same time, I'm also a millennial and, I'm all about change. Change can be good, but sometimes too much change all at once isn't always the best. And that's what I think, many fintech companies are doing. And that's where they kind of fall short in that they try to change, so many things at once that they don't have enough manpower, enough knowledge to pivot and be able to accomplish full changes within those short periods. Anyways, buddy, it was great interviewing you, and you're definitely a cool guy, man. And I appreciate you participating on my podcast. And hey, I wish you and everyone around you, continued success. So, happy New Year, and best of luck to you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate being on your pod. There's nothing I love more than mixing up a little 401k with some podcasts. So, thanks, buddy. Continued success in your podcast. Thanks for letting me share my views, and see ya.